Welcome in to the Volatile Podcast. This is your weekly reminder that being a Vols fan is a terminal diagnosis that we all share. My name is Mac Williams. I'm here with my good friends Nick Duncan and Jeff Wright. Guys, how are we doing tonight? Nick, what's up?
Hey, man, doing good. Transfer portal season is slowing down, coming to an end. It's January 21st, so it's all Joey watch now. And because basketball's dead and baseball's not here yet. So,
Jeff, how you doing, man?
I'm dead inside.
All right, and with that, we will see you next week, listener. I hope you had a good time. No, just kidding. We're going to open it up tonight with the obvious. Transfer portal, we'll start with that. Hot topics, latest news here. Tennessee has secured a quarterback. Ryan Staub, I believe, is the correct pronunciation of his last name, even though it looks like Staub. Ryan Staub, Colorado transfer. Guys, how are we feeling about Ryan?
Mostly, I'm just glad you're back to help us pronounce the quarterback names correctly. Because Jeff and I weren't great on the quarterback pronunciations last week.
Perbula.
We got multiple notes, listener. We got multiple notes.
Pribula's got a ring to it. Yeah.
The best way to say his name? Not Tennessee's quarterback. I'm so happy we didn't end up with him.
Who cares? Well, when when we were offline and Mac was saying, you guys pronounced that name wrong the entire episode, I said UVA's quarterback. Who cares?
Who cares?
No,
he was seriously on a list with DJ Lagway of do not take at any costs for me. So I was super thrilled we didn't get him. To Staub, is that how we're supposed to say it?
I think so.
Hey, buddy, I'm from Tennessee. He's Staub for me, okay? He's Staub.
Ryan Staubach.
I'm okay with it in that he's now Gaston Moore, right? He's just the third string break in case of emergency. It'd be nice if Joey got eligible and he was fourth string. But hopefully he never sees the field. And that's okay by me. If it's okay with him, totally fine. We needed another scholarship quarterback. I don't really believe in Deion Sanders as a coach. I don't think like looting some deep talent reserve. But he's a live body who can throw a football. So that's great. The only problem with it is Heupel chasing Sorsby, at least if early reports are to be believed, and then going in with the Godfather offer on Levitt that didn't come through. I just think it sends a mixed message. So the fan base is confused. Like if you really got confidence in GMAC and or Faison, why are you chasing these big names? I'm willing to believe that he thought, okay, those guys are just so much better that we've got to take a shot at it. I just think it's mixed messaging, but he shouldn't care about the messaging he's sending, right? He's supposed to be building a football program, so I'm satisfied.
Yeah, I think it seems pretty obvious that it's a depth add, and so, like Jeff said, I don't think he'll play a lot. I'm sure he was told, and probably genuinely, that he'll have an opportunity to compete, assuming Joey doesn't come back with these two young guys. It just doesn't seem to me, based on what I know about him, that he'll have much of a shot to beat out the other two guys when both seem more talented. And in the case of GMAC, he has another year in the system. So it's fine. I mean, this is what we said. We said if we weren't going to get a big name, we would probably get some kind of mid-tier guy that we would add for depth, and that's kind of what we've seen. So, I mean, all things considered, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised to hear you guys say that because ultimately, I think I agree with everything you're saying. I think it's going to end up being one of the other two guys. Let's just say Joey can't come back, just so that's the quarterback room as we know it is right now. I do think that one of the other two guys will win that spot, but I kind of feel like it's more of an open competition than what you guys are kind of making it out to be. I feel like, and obviously I know that you agree that obviously if he comes in and establishes himself as the best QB, you think he would start. I know you're not saying that, but I do think that from day one, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't think that he's being brought in just to be a backup. I think he's being brought in to have an equal opportunity shot, and probably Heupel knows what he's actually capable of more than I do, more than we do. But I do think that they wanted to bring in a quarterback that was going to be a legitimate competitor in the room. And I hope that he is, because if he is, then that's only going to hopefully promote the play of GMAC and of Faison, and we're going to actually see the best quarterback in the room get the start next season.
Well, and that's fine. I mean, I want the best product on the field. But if he wins the job, I think you lose GMAC. I don't know if you lose him in the spring, but you definitely lose him the next year. And I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I would rather. What I would prefer is that we started having quarterbacks in the pipeline for a few years that actually then became the starter. So I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just kind of hopeful that he slots into maybe the backup this year. Maybe he's who wins the backup job, and Faison gets a year to season, and GMAC's the starter, and we win the SEC and the national championship and erase Kurt Signetti from everybody's
who
memory.
cares?
That's just
Yeah,
what I'm
who
hoping
cares?
for. I'm trying to keep it reasonable.
Well, let me go ahead and give just some points here on Ryan Stobe. I wanted to kind of give you guys a rundown of his play style and kind of what he brings to the table. And I want to see, just kind of be soaking that up and thinking about it, because I want to see who it puts you in the mind of. Ryan Stobe is a former 3-star out of high school from California. He's played in 12 games in his college career, all at Colorado. He started 2 of those games. Some things about his play style. He seems really comfortable in the pocket. He tends to climb the pocket a lot, well-timed climbing, and he does that more than getting flushed out. But pressure does seem to affect his game mentally more than physically. His feet can get a little busy when pressure's on. His throws can be late or inaccurate when his first read isn't there, when he's having to go through progressions. He has an above average arm, but not elite. But his biggest red flag would be decision making. So given those kind of all those details, who's your remind you of?
Are you going to say Joe Milton?
Well, I want to hear what you have to say.
Well, Joe's arm was elite. I've got one in my head. I'll let Jeff go first, though.
Well, you just said above average. That's what made me think of it. And the poor decision making. Yeah, I'll go Joe Milton. That's all I'm going to. I don't know other football because I've narrowed my field to exclusively Tennessee Volunteers.
I guess to me, in recent memory, hearing all that kind of, I don't know, maybe Jarrett Garantano a little bit.
Yeah, both of those are good. I think there's aspects. I just couldn't help but think of Nico. I mean, this just feels like not the 3-star part, obviously, but the fact that climbs the pocket more than he gets flushed. Pressure affects him mentally. Feet gets busy. Makes late throws. Like, that just feels like Nico to me. There's so many times where I just felt like I was banging my head against the wall, like, get rid of the ball. You're a 5-star dual threat quarterback. Run the ball. Like, get out of the pocket. Like, quit climbing up and getting sacked. It just felt like that was a common frustration in the 24 season with Nico. And when I read this and I was thinking about it, I was like, geez, man, like, this really feels like Nico Yamaleava 2.0.
Do we have any footage of him running out of bounds to end the game?
Yeah, seriously.
Unfortunately, that's on Joe's tape too, which is brutal. That's why I think that's also an apt comparison. And honestly, Jarrett Garantano is too. I think all of those are good. So the next thing I had really was moving on from him was just. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Now that you've done this and it's going to be in my head, I totally revoke everything I said and recant everything I said. I hate the signing. I want him away from the team. I want him gone. I want them to cut him after they come out to get ready for spring ball. Just get him out of here, man.
Oh, man. Yeah, well, the question I had was still on subject of Ryan, but was just a way too early. Like, who do you think is going to win the job? Honestly, Faison, GMAC, Stobe. Obviously, if Joey comes back, we all agree he's probably going to be your starter. Unless George makes some sort of incredible step this year, there's just probably no way he could beat out Joey. So let's say Joey's not coming back. Of those 3 guys, who do you think's our starter when we take the field next season?
You go, Nick.
Gun in my head, GMAC.
Yeah, I mean, I'm there too. And I know we're going to talk about this in a little while, but with our new elite strength and conditioning coach, I expect him to add 30 pounds in the offseason and come out looking like a professional wrestler. and he's going to win the job, and he's going to be great. It's going to go great.
Yeah, yeah, and I want to kind of go back to what Jeff was saying earlier when he was talking about what we brought in Stobe to kind of be a backup, and this was going to be GMAC or Faison's job. I think that's right, Jeff. I think that if you kind of reset your mind back to the offseason between the 24 and 25 season, before we knew Nico was gonna transfer, before we knew any of that,
Yeah,
um,
that
you
was
know,
the plan.
I thought about the 25 season, this past season. I thought the defense is going to take a step back. Nico should progress. We still have some offensive weapons. I imagined that we would be probably a 9-win team, and Nico would go on to the NFL and probably get drafted, and then it would be George. Like I assumed that George would be starting in 2026 before any of this stuff unfolded. Obviously, bringing in Joey, we got a better product than we expected off of a quarterback that we brought in April from Joey. And obviously, if he gets a chance to come back in 26, that would be awesome. But assuming that he can't, this whole progression was supposed to be George this year, anyways. Unless Faison is just as amazing as advertised and he can beat out George in 26, in which case you're going to lose George probably. And rightfully so, But I think either of those scenarios where George wins the job because he was just the next in line and he's the best quarterback, or Faison beats him out because he is that good. In either of those scenarios, I think that Heupel is starting to accomplish what you mentioned that you would like for us to have, Jeff, which is QBs in the pipeline. We're bringing the next guy up. I think that starts, hopefully, the dominoes falling in that progression. But so I would be very pleased and very happy if George is the starting quarterback going in this fall. To your point, I just hope that he's physically ready to do what Heupel asked him to do, because mentally I feel like he might be the best quarterback that we've had since Hendon Hooker.
Oh yeah, that'd be wonderful. I mean, you take that read, everything's on track. Not to reiterate my point too much, but it's just they kind of threw you for a loop narratively by going after Levitt so aggressively, right? But that's okay. If we're back to what the original plan was, like you said, if Joey happened to get dropped back in unexpectedly, both of those scenarios are very acceptable to me. And honestly, Joey coming back I think that would give GMAC a chance to stay in the pipeline another year. So you might get 1 year further down that road, which would be great. I would love to see that happen. Rest in peace, Jake Merklinger.
I want to, Nick, unless you have anything to add, I want to go ahead and flesh that out too. Let's say Joey does come back. Do you think that we retain both GMAC and Faison for the 27 season?
I think there's a good chance because GMAC will know Joey's ahead of him. Sorry, Nick, I didn't mean to jump on that, but Joey has already beaten GMAC in a competition. And Faison, it's pretty easy to understand. Like, oh yeah, I was a true freshman, so I think so. Now, in the age of the portal and just the nature of Tennessee sports, probably GMAC and Faison are both going to leave to join the crew team right after spring practice. So, we're talking about lunacy here, which is what will happen for Tennessee. But at least narratively, today in January before snowpocalypse, I can talk myself into that.
You heard it here, folks. You heard it here first. 2 Tennessee quarterbacks are going to end up rowing on the Clinch River this spring.
Would be
That
only
would be
would be only the third most surprising thing to happen to Tennessee football this decade. Just so you know, it'd be the third most surprising thing.
Oh my gosh, dude! If that happens, I don't even like. That would be the most insane prediction ever. Like if you call that'd be insane. To get back to the point though, I really don't see us retaining both those quarterbacks if Joey comes back and is our starter
Oh
this
yeah,
year. I think if Joey comes back and starts, I think you're going to lose one of the two, because obviously in 27 only one of them can start, and I think Faison's going to think he's good enough that he should be starting if he doesn't win the job. And I think the same for GMAC. He got passed over by Joey twice, maybe fairly so, and maybe he's okay with that. But then if he gets beat in the 27 season by Faison, I don't think he's going to stay. So I just don't see you retaining both of them for 27 if Joey comes back this year. And that's maybe kind of a black pill. Obviously, I'd love for everyone to just stay and build the program, but I think that's more realistic.
yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, that
I
makes
think you
sense.
definitely. I think I think it's pretty easy to talk um, Faison into staying more than GMAC since he's been here a couple years. So I think it really just depends on the mental makeup of George McIntyre, which I don't know enough about. But if he's just kind of gritty and says he's gonna stay, he knows the system, he thinks that he's definitely gonna win that job the next year if he has that kind of swagger. If he doesn't, then I think he's the most likely one that you lose. I would say um, I think it's probably right that you definitely don't have both those guys in 27. Um, I think you can. I think it's probably I'm probably saying if Joey comes back, I'm like 60% GMAC stays, 40% he leaves. I think Faison's higher than that.
Well, so on the positive side, everybody says GMAC loves Tennessee, but that just pales in comparison that people will be in his ear, right, recruiting him out. Now, the one slight caveat, and it probably won't catch up where Tennessee benefits from it, or even by the time he would be looking to transfer. But I think I sent y'all that tweet that said like there's like 10,000 players in the portal who has no they have no landing spot at this moment. And then you started seeing these reports that these guys were going into the portal, finding out the grass isn't greener, try to go back to their original team, and they're told, "No, man, we filled your spot." That's going to catch up at some point. I don't know that it will allow you to keep multiple 4 and 5 star quarterbacks on the bench for multiple years, but at some point there's going to be a market reset on that. And so, maybe GMAC does the math, and I'd put it at 10%. We could keep them all. What you said sounds really reasonable, Mac, but it's late January. I'm going to talk myself into what I want right now.
I respect that. I respect that. Next, let's talk about Jeff's favorite news in the last week since we last spoke with you, listener, and that is the roller coaster ride of Arion Carter. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown of what the last month or so for Arion Carter has been. So on December 12th, Arion Carter declared for the draft and went and did all of his draft evaluation, preparation, all that goes into that. On January 16th, so just this past week, a few days ago, he removed his name from the draft and entered the portal and was going to be playing somewhere else. And then 2 days later, just 3 days ago, he is announced that he is returning to Tennessee this year. So I think that's obviously great news for us. And I know that you guys are thrilled about that. So go ahead and talk about that.
Nick?
Hey, I don't see a lot of downsides. I mean, the one thing that's kind of stuck in the back of my head is the thing that Jeff has said about the Boo Carters of the world that have done this thing where they flirt with leaving and they come back and they're kind of cancerous. I think the one thing that makes me nervous. Ultimately, I'm glad Arion came back. I think the one caution, I don't know if it's a red flag, but at least a yellow flag, is he's coming back to a pretty different defense. It's kind of like 50% of a new unit, and a lot more guys in that linebacker core that are also potentially some dudes, and so competitive spot. I think Arion's probably going to start on this unit, but can they gel and or is there any infighting between the old guys and the new guys? I think that's true for everybody in the day of the portal. Is who's good at motivating and galvanizing your legacy players and your portal players. But that's kind of the only thing I see is and I don't know. Arion's demeanor doesn't seem like a guy that's like Luke Carter, who's just trying to grift, for lack of a better way of saying it, and get as much money as possible. So I don't know what that portal thing was about. I don't know if Arion thought, hey, they brought all these new guys in and maybe I don't have a spot. And then he went in the portal and they were like, hey, what you doing? And brought him back. But that's kind of the only caution that I have about it. But ultimately, it's hard to argue that this team would be that this team won't be better with Arion Carter on the team. So
I guess I'm the sunshine pumper for this episode, but This has been the one thing this off season, that I have truly gotten excited about, and it's narrative. So, if I can draw a comparison, it feels like to me that the era of the television show that everybody's watching is over, right? So we had maybe Seinfeld, Lost, just broad swaths of society were watching that. Stranger Things feels like the last gasp of that kind of experience. And I think Arion may be the last gasp of what I loved about college football. So they brought him in like he played running back in high school and then became a linebacker at the end, right? And like rocketed up ratings. They get him to Tennessee. He's here for several years. He gets better every year. He's the guy who should retire as a VFL. So like he's not Eric Berry, he's not Peyton Manning. I don't know where you put him with like Casey Clausen or just one of those guys we rooted for a ton of years. I don't know how much longer we're going to have relationships with players that long. And so Arion should be a guy who goes out as a VFL. I'm telling myself what Nick just laid out. He thought he was going to get drafted higher, got his grades back. That's not the case. His agent tells him Tennessee spent a ton of money, brought in a bunch of linebackers already. You don't have a spot. You need to go see where you can make money elsewhere. Then you heard those reports that Heupel was personally involved in recruiting him back. And again, I just dig it narratively. This feels like a guy who should be a lifetimer in Knoxville. And so I'm excited about it. Honestly, the dark side of this is that it becomes the defensive version of what happens if Joey comes back. So, like, does T-Lander hang around? Right? They're not going to play four linebackers. They're not running a 3-4. So, who gets the shaft on playing time? Arion runs out of eligibility. What's the kid from Penn State? I can't. It slipped my mind.
Amari Campbell.
Amari Campbell.
Amari Campbell. He's only got 1 year of eligibility left, right?
As far as I know.
Yeah. So if T-Lander catches the downside of that, or Spillman, is that the other one that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One of those guys gets short shrift. Does he bail even though the future's wide open for him? Like that could happen here. I just like having a guy who's here for multiple years, who grew up in our program and is going to finish it out in the program. So figure it out, Jim Knowles. Figure out how to get your linebackers on the field and use them well. And, let's have the best linebacking core in the country.
Yeah, absolutely. VolQuest talked about how they thought this room was now the most, kind of overcrowded position group on the team. To what you're saying, Jeff, that like there's no way we're going to be able to have all these guys. Not this year, I think. I think we'll have them all on the roster this year, but next year, anyone that can come back, I don't know that you're going to get them all. But I wanted to talk more about that room specifically. So that room is now made up of Aaron Carter, Amari Campbell, Edwin Spillman, Jalen Perlotti, Jeremiah T-Lander, and then we have two incoming freshmen, TJ White and Braden Rouse. Braden Rouse obviously was a pretty coveted recruit that we got. But man, I just look at these lists of names, and obviously, like national media is not going to have a ton of to say about Edwin Spillman or Jeremiah T-Lander, right? Jordan Perlotti, I think, it does have some notoriety among like more invested college football fans. But that list of names, guys, I just feel like the linebacker room might be the best position group on the team now, which is kind of crazy considering they were one of your weakest in the last couple of seasons. What do you guys agree with that? Disagree with that? What do you think about that?
Nick, you go ahead. I waxed eloquent and long.
I agree. I think I don't even know what other unit rivals it really as far as depth goes. I mean, Arion Carter, the Carter Campbell combo, like that alliteration there, is maybe the best two linebackers, in the SEC, if not the country, coming in this year. So, Spillman, Perlotti, and T-Lander are drop offs, but probably not a lot. And so, I think you feel comfortable. I mean, that's a spot where guys get hurt. And so, it feels nice to have quality depth on the defensive side of the ball. For what feels like the first time in a while. I mean, we had the great depth on the defensive line in 24, but there were other positions that suffered, and it feels like all the units on defense have pretty good depth, and the linebacker core particularly has incredible depth. And so, like Max said, I don't think you keep them all, but for this year, when if a guy goes down, it should be pretty easy to just be like, hey, next man up. And if a guy needs a blow, you've got another dude coming in. And who knows? Maybe Knowles was really creative. Maybe he maybe he gets some of those guys are a little bit quicker in that linebacker core, and maybe they come off the edge some a little bit too. I mean, you can aid your defensive line depth by maybe letting some of those guys come off the edge here and there in certain packages. So, if he's creative, I think that even if they're not all playing linebacker all the time, that they can still have meaningful snaps and contribute to that unit. So
they're going to have to do something like that because, I mean, you're probably going to have to look and see which one's the fastest backpedaling and see if he can play star in like obvious, certain positions. But yeah, I mean, I guess the only other position group that would have an argument for number 2 would be wide receiver in terms of depth. But I mean, really, honestly, that also represents a ton of money in your roster budget. So we should be expecting them to be the best linebacking core in the country. And Jim Knowles is an old guy. He needs to. He's got the resources to figure out how to make the best use of this from a asset allocation standpoint and on the field product. And so you're making a lot of money, Mr. Knowles. We have confidence in you. Go figure it out, and let's see what these guys can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, kind of moving on from the linebackers there, the next big news is Derek Owings. So Tennessee hired Derek Owings, the strength and conditioning coordinator from Indiana, and Tennessee made him the highest paid strength and conditioning coach in the country to secure Owings. Guys, I mean, I think this is obviously a really good move for Heupel and his staff. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say how much of an actual impact from game to game, from week to week that your strength and conditioning coach has. Obviously, the offseason, helping players bulk up, helping players get stronger, stay stronger. All stay that healthy. Stuff is, stay healthy is huge. But, I don't know how much of an impact this will have on the players' week-to-week success. Obviously, I hope it's a ton, and I think it could be a ton if you got the right situation. But I think the biggest thing that this does, and so I'd love to hear what you guys think about this. I think the biggest thing that it does is it shows Heupel's willingness to get rid of somebody and hire somebody new that's not part of his coaching tree. This feels like Knowles and then Owings back to back just feels like two guys that he just went out and said, hey, I think this is the best guy on the market. I'm going to get him. And that's encouraging because I think a big critique that we've had over the years is it feels like Heupel does a lot of, in-house promotion, a lot of, keeping his guys close, keeping every coaching hire close to the chest. And this just feels like he's like, you know what, these guys are proven to be great at their job. I'm going to get them. What do you guys think about that?
Go ahead, Jeff.
You go first, Mr. Duncan.
No, I've been going first. Have at it.
I mean, everything you just said, Mac. Now, apparently they were together at UCF for 1 year. Did y'all read that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like the Knowles thing. I don't know. I've watched Tennessee bring in Sal Sunseri or Dave Clawson to be like the magic bullet to the problem. So I'm very aware that this means it could be a catastrophe. It could not work at all. But it seems like Heupel is going all in to make sure the coaching staff isn't the letdown. And as much as I hate him, Danny White's finding the money to do this kind of stuff. Like you've got maybe the highest paid defensive coordinator and the highest paid. I think he's the first strength and conditioning coach to make over $1 million.
1.2.
They're trying to fix it, and that's we're acting like big boys, and so I'm encouraged by that. I'm not as encouraged by that as I am Aaron Carter, but okay, this is good. This is what Tennessee should do. Josh seems to feel a sense of urgency. Now, if he can secure a timeout management coordinator, I feel like the staff has been fixed.
We did also go out and hire a new nutritionist. I don't know if you guys saw that news.
Oh, I
But we
hadn't
did
heard.
hire.
I had my resume in, but I guess they're not going to call me back.
That's that's shocking.
We were
Yeah.
going to go.
That's the
I
most
thought-
shocking thing I've heard today.
I thought the cheesy gordita crunch diet was a great, idea that Jeff had. I cannot believe Heupel didn't go for it. Like a cheesy gordita crunch only diet for players seems like
Yeah.
it could not go wrong.
Do you know what I could do for GMAC on a cheesy gordita crunch diet?
He'd gain some weight. That's for sure.
I was going in on all seed oils all the time. Like they would just go to the cooler and they'd get a cold seed oil. This is some rapeseed oil in there.
Just a seed oil drip directly into the veins.
Yes. I'm really stunned. It seems unprofessional that they wouldn't at least let me know they weren't going to go with
Listen,
me.
I know we're joking, but like he really did go out and hire a new nutritionist, some girl from Kansas who's supposed to be like some like crazy savant up and comer nutritionist. So I mean, it is another piece, I guess, of the we will spend the money to have what we think is the best at every position, even who decides what these boys eat. So
Yeah, more power to them. That's how they need to act. Because everybody's like, maybe Josh Heupel's seat's getting warm. I think it's pretty warm, and he seems to be aware.
I think
that,
he thinks it's warm. Yeah.
Something needs to change, and that has to tell you that he really does believe in GMAC or Faison. Like he really does believe he can work with this. So I'm I'm just less optimistic because I'm a Tennessee fan, but he's trying. He's doing what he should be doing, and I have to just be happy about that.
Strength and conditioning coach quoted today on the Tennessee football Twitter thread as saying, "You can't be soft when you go to war. Got to attack this lift." So I like the rhetoric. Who knows if it translates? But
yeah, have you watched the first video they put out? Dude, you need to get on Ball Twitter and watch that promo video. I mean, it will get you excited. And those boys are gasping for air on day one. So he's already got them. He's got them working.
Flew straight here from Miami. Still hungry.
Love it. Well, let's go ahead and move on to portal losses. So this technically is not exactly a loss, but I think we all had this guy kind of penciled in as being on the team for this coming year, and that's Gavin Freeman, who was the Oklahoma State
huge
wide
black
receiver.
pill.
Yeah. So we thought we kind of secured him in the transfer portal, but he is not going to be at Tennessee this year. In our group chat listener, we've coined him as Almost Malone.
Almost
a
Malone.
little playoff Post Malone there.
And other things we can't say on the podcast.
He had a vibe. He had a vibe that I was digging, and I'm super sad that we will not be partaking in it.
Yeah. Same here.
No,
man.
for sure. So the good news is that that's the only person that we've lost in the past week, which has been the first week since we've been kind of in the portal season that we haven't really lost a key player. Jeff, go ahead.
If you look at the physical presentation of that guy, he seems to be the sort of person who may make a last minute decision to go try to catch balls from DJ Lagway at Baylor. So maybe not the best decision making guy that you could look for. And that's what he did. So, also maybe dodged a bullet.
Yeah, no, for sure. So that's really it for new losses. So I think that's encouraging, that we have not lost anyone in the last week here. But we did get some more additions. So let's go ahead and run through these. I will confess that I didn't do my research on how to pronounce this name, so I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to say
That's what we do. That's what Jeff and I do.
You say it, Tribula.
Tevis Metcalf, or Tevis maybe Metcalf. This is the brother of TJ Metcalf, who we had already talked about last week. But this is another safety that Tennessee's gotten, the brother of TJ. We've also added Donovan Haslam, offensive lineman from West Virginia. Trent Thomas, which is a tight end. That's right. Trent Thomas, a tight end. Javen Gordon, running back. DJ Burks, another safety, and then Isaiah Harge, which is a cornerback, wide receiver, kind of play both sides of the ball from Colorado. So maybe
Travis Hunter. Great value, Travis Hunter.
Travis Hunter light.
Exactly. So, yeah, which one of these guys, Metcalf, Haslam, Thomas, Gordon, Burks, Harge, are you guys most excited about that we brought in? Nick, you go ahead, bud.
I just think we needed some tight end depth. So I think that's the one. I didn't find a lot about Trent Thomas that like made me incredibly excited or blackpilled or anything. But that to me at this juncture, like since our last pod, kind of seemed like the position of most need after Van Dorselaer left. So that's the one I was most excited about. Always need running back depth as well. So the other guys, excited to have them. I mean, it just adds to depth at O line. Can you have too many O linemen? The way those guys can get hurt, rolled ankles, things like that. I
Can
don't
you
believe
have too many
can. So
Haslams? I mean, you just need more Haslams.
you can have too many
We already have too many.
Yeah, one is more.
To be clear, this guy's not related to the Haslams of Knoxville royalty, correct?
Oh, you sweet
No.
sunshine child. You sweet summer child.
He's a plant.
He's going to be a second-round draft pick for the Browns next year. So I'm excited for the running back. I actually liked his tape. I watched a lot of that. I think we need a good number two. I think we got a good number two. And this is really going to undercut my point, but the one that I was most excited for at the time of the signing was the safety. I think he was the second from.
We had two, DJ Burks and Tevis Metcalf. So which one are you talking about?
Yeah, Tevis Metcalf. I was excited for him. And so everybody says Knowles really depends on safety play. His defense relies heavily on those. That guy looks like he's going to be a contributor. And so those were the two. I mean, I'm happy with a tight end. I just assume because he's a monster that he's a blocking tight end. That's fine. That's great. But, yeah, those two got me pretty excited. I was glad to see them come in.
Yeah, and on that, I think I'm most excited about Javen Gordon as well, the running back, because we knew as soon as Peyton Lewis left, we're going to have to get a running back. And it felt like some of the bigger name running backs that we didn't get, that kind of felt like a bummer. And so I'm just glad that we got someone that, to your point, Jeff, even though he's not a big name that necessarily moves the needle, I do think he looks like a guy who will contribute to the room well. And so I'm excited about that. Nick, I'm surprised you didn't go with Haslam, though, because of his West Virginia connections. Listener, you don't know this, but Nick is kind of romantic about the West Virginia Mountaineers. So I thought you might say that.
Hey, I'm an Appalachian guy through and through. I'm just saying that West Virginia makes more sense in the SEC than Missouri. That's all I'm saying. I've said it for years. I will not deny it. The Haslam name threw me off a little bit. Can't lie about that. I'm just excited about the big tight end. I think we all saw the woes that we had when we tried to throw the ball out of 12 personnel this year. And so when we try to do that inevitably next year in short yardage, he could be a help.
As a blocker.
I hope so. Volquest said basically that they think he is going to be brought in primarily as a blocking tight end. But Austin Price made the point that that's what Ethan Davis was supposed to be doing, or sorry, not Ethan Davis, but who's our?
He's gonna have a great year, man. He's gonna break out.
Miles,
thank you, Kitzelman. That's what Kitzelman was brought in to do. Was to primarily be a blocking tight end, and he obviously was much more than that, more so in 24 than 25. But
maybe we should have left him as a blocking tight end.
It's definitely possible that that Trent Thomas ends up playing a bigger role than what even they brought him in for. So obviously I hope that all these guys pan out and add quality depth like Nick said, and maybe we can see some of these guys on the field this year. Anything else latest news-wise?
Just you're disrespecting Ethan Davis. He looks great in practice. He's going to have a breakout year this year. This is the year, man. It's just going to happen.
He looks good in November. He's going to have a good year. We have quantifiable evidence on the field.
Sure. We had like 3 games. He played decent.
You're supposed to be a sunshine pump in this episode. That's what you said.
Can't do it on Ethan Davis. I've heard it too many times. Let's get Deshaun Brame a good look. Let's get Deshaun Brame a look.
Oh, my grief. Listen to this, man.
Let's go ahead and transition to basketball before Jeff craps on our tight ends anymore.
I can crap on the basketball team.
I'm glad for you to do that because they at least deserve it. But the basketball team, listener, they fell to Kentucky 80-78. this past Saturday. We have not played a game since, and so we are fresh off of that embarrassing loss at home to Kentucky. So I wanted to just kind of lead with this stat. Tennessee has won 100 of the last 102 home games where they led at halftime. The two losses of those 102 games are Kentucky the last 2 seasons. So we have lost to Kentucky twice in a row and won 100 times before that when we're winning at home at half. So Mark Pope is now 3-1 against Rick Barnes in his tenure at Kentucky. The first question is, does Mark Pope own Rick Barnes?
Hard to argue otherwise.
For sure. Embarrassingly so. That guy can't find his way out of the locker room this season.
I mean, it's the only 2 home games that we've lost when leading at the half. So
yeah,
it's just hard to argue otherwise. I mean, because I think John Calipari is a better coach than Mark Pope, and Rick Barnes for a long time wore him out at Kentucky. And now Mark Pope goes there, who's not as good, doesn't have a good roster as some of those Calipari rosters that we beat, and Barnes can't beat him. And not only can he not beat him, he can't beat him when he goes into the locker room with a 6-possession lead. So,
and Calipari beat him this year too.
Yeah.
Yep. I think so. To just kind of play devil's advocate for the argument. Obviously 3-1, you hear that in a vacuum. Yes, Mark Pope owns Rick Barnes. The one loss, though, is the most important loss of all the losses.
Sweet 16.
Rick Barnes beat Mark Pope last year in the Sweet 16 to go to the Elite Eight. And I think that does carry some weight. So obviously, if somehow you met up with Kentucky again in the NCAA tournament and you beat them, Rick Barnes is now 2-0 against Mark Pope in the NCAA tournament. I think that has to mean something. Obviously those games are more important than regular season games. But at the same time, you would just like to think that a team that's coached by Rick Barnes is not going to lose games, not only that they're supposed to win, but they, like, in the script of the game, have a really great chance of winning. Like, we had no business losing that game at all because we had a 17-point lead at one point in the first half. And you go to halftime still up 11, like Nick said, basically a 6-possession game, and you still find a way to lose. And I just don't know how to quantify that other than saying Mark Pope clearly has some thing about him that he's able to get his players to perform at a higher level than normal against a Rick Barnes team, or he's got some sort of strategic advantage against Rick Barnes that he's able to figure out majority of the time. I'm not quite sure what to do with it other than obviously it does not look very good. And so I'm going to be really interested to see what Tennessee does against Kentucky on the road later this year.
Well, you take away this victory and it's a 2-1 split, I have nothing good to say about Mark Pope. I just think what's happened this year, and this game for me was kind of a backbreaker. I've been on here for a couple of weeks being like, the upside is they figure it out. Nate Ament grows into the player we want him to be. They're still young. They can gel. This game just broke me. I just assumed this team. Seriously, at this point, I would not bet on them making the NCAA tournament. I'm completely black-pilled on this team. And I think
Sorry, go ahead and finish.
No, that's fine.
I was just going to say, especially with what we've been saying about, like, well, if Nate Ament can just improve. Well, Nate Ament is improving, and everyone else has stopped understanding how the game of basketball works.
Or it's what we talked about last week, Nick, that to make Nate Ament do what you want Nate Ament to do,
you got to totally change the team. It
throws off the way you built the team this year.
Yep, you got to totally change the team.
I think what the big lesson for me coming out of Kentucky is that Rick Barnes custom built a team, and he did a bad job at it. And that's just going to be the epitaph on this year's tombstone. You didn't do a good job building the team.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and keep talking about Barnes because let's get into the game specifically. So Tennessee, like I said, had a 17-point lead about halfway through the first half, maybe a little bit more than halfway. And around the 5-minute mark, Jacoby Gillespie picked up his second foul. And so you have Jacoby Gillespie with 2 fouls. You have Bishop Boswell with 2 fouls. Your 2 starting guards, your 2 kind of primary floor generals, the guys that are, possessing the ball the most. And Rick Barnes made the decision to sit both those guys with 5 minutes left in the first half, 17-point lead. And we go the rest of that half with those guys on the bench. And whether that was the reason you lost, that's kind of hard to say because obviously you still have an 11-point lead at the half. There's still plenty of game to be played. But watching that game, those last 5 minutes of the first half, if you couldn't see the score bug, you would think, man, Kentucky's just dominating Tennessee in this 5 minutes. And I just really am frustrated with Rick Barnes's commitment to doing things the old-fashioned way. In reality, Tennessee needed one of those two guys or both of those guys on the floor during that 5-minute stretch. You have a 17-point lead. If you can make that a 25-point lead at the half, if because you've got those guys in the game, they're still in the flow. Even if they both pick up their third foul, you don't foul out at 3 fouls. I just don't understand why we are treating two guards that you need on the floor, at least one of the two, pretty much all the time, and you're going to sit both of them because they have 2 fouls. That was the part that really frustrated me walking away from the game, is it felt like we kind of gave the momentum of the game away in those last 5 minutes of the first half, and we didn't have to.
This is the Barnes experience, man. Like, it just sucks. I'm not the biggest Rick Barnes fan, but you value that he brings character as a coach. He's never going to be caught in anything like what Lane Kiffin does on his best day off. There's stability, there's preeminence, there was long streaks of various fashion. Like, Barnes brings all that, but it's necessarily tied to I think he did it finally this year, but he will never call a timeout on an inbounds at the 4-second count. He just is not going to do that. He's going to sit his players when they get 2 fouls in the first half. And, Rick Barnes should get to decide when he doesn't want to be at Tennessee anymore. But as long as he's at Tennessee, this is what you get with him. And so, Mac, I'm kind of the old school basketball guy in this group. What I think is defensible is that you play one of those guys and save the other. I think you could talk yourself into, okay, it can't be both of our lead guards. I'm going to have to roll the dice. Which one do I think has the best chance of surviving without a third foul? But you keep one of them on the floor, and he's not going to do that because he's teaching them life lessons or something. I don't know. And so I think it was an indefensible move. It's just who Rick Barnes is. And if you're going to take what good he brings to the program, you're going to take these old school rules. You're going to take that the Elite Eight is your ceiling. And I'm sure there's a lot of Tennessee fans who are very satisfied with that. I feel kind of foolish not being satisfied with it. But it's just what we're signed up for until Rick decides he doesn't want to do it anymore.
Do you guys agree? Like, if you were the coach of Tennessee and you just were dropped into this game and you've got, your 2 guards with 2 fouls, you got 5 minutes left in the first half. Do you agree or disagree? Just if you were dropped in and you're the head coach, would you make that same decision? Would you decide, I'm going to sit both these guys? Nick, you go first.
Yeah, I understand why he did it because you're up 17 points. I probably would have left Boswell in the game and saved Gillespie for down the stretch. But I do understand it. It is the old school way of thinking. I think if that game is under 10 points, I definitely don't do it. I think with a 17-point lead at home, I might have done it, but I think the smartest move is probably to leave Boswell on the floor for the last 5 minutes of that half and see if you can make it out without him getting a foul. And if he does, like, they have 10 fouls between the two of them, and if one of them picks up a third foul, you still have 5 to burn, and you have a whole nother half. So you've burnt half their fouls in the first half, and you've got another half to burn the other 5. So to me, it's just the time and the fouls. So why not leave one of them on the floor and say, okay, I'm going to risk allowing one of them to get one more foul because in my mind, I have 5 fouls to spend in each half.
Yeah. Jeff, what about you? Would you make that decision if you were in his shoes?
I can legitimately say I'm certainly I think what I would have done is I would have put one of them on the bench. And I also think that once you got under a 13-point lead and you had an offensive possession where you didn't bump back up to 15, particularly if you're around the 2-minute mark, I bring the guy back in the game. That's what I think I would have done on that point. And this is why I'm not a coach, and this is why Rick Barnes is going to go in the Hall of Fame. It could have been a worse decision because you bring the guy back in under 2 minutes, he gets another foul. It looks really stupid. But I would want to protect the lead a little bit more than Rick Barnes did, and that's what I would have done. I would have set one of them and then brought them back in to see if they could get out of the half, but make a positive contribution.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think both of you guys are right. I think there's an argument. I think it's obvious what Rick Barnes was trying to do. And again, I think our team should be good enough that we can maintain the lead, which they did. I mean, they had an 11-point lead going to the half, and you should still be able to win the game. Obviously, that's true. The reality is, though, we've all played basketball. When you come off the floor, especially for five game minutes, but then also all the time that you spend in the locker room at halftime, and you come back out in the second half and you're asked to take the floor again, it takes a little bit to kind of reacclimate yourself to the pace of the game. I just think it's really dumb to take I think Jacoby Gillespie is clearly the most important offensive player on our team in terms of getting baskets and keeping the ball moving and all that stuff. It's just really hard to ask your point guard to sit for that long because he has a couple fouls and then expect him to be the same player when he comes into the game in the second half. Jacoby Gillespie had a really good first half up until that point. He was shooting the ball well. The offense looked pretty good. And I just feel like you completely took him out of game speed, out of game mode, and you handicapped him for the rest of the game. And I get the whole, if you're a good enough player, none of that stuff should matter. I get all of that. But at the end of the day, it's basketball. It very much so is a flow, momentum, kind of sport. And if you are sitting on the bench for that long, it's just really hard to get yourself back into game mode coming off the bench cold.
That's true, Mac. I would love to know what Rick Barnes thinks about this team because a factor for me is I just assume we're going into a scoring drought and we can't rely on free throws to sort of, I don't know what you want to say, lifeline us through a scoring drought. And so if I were coaching the team, I would be trying to prevent that drought. And so I would, what you said about Gillespie, he would need to be on the floor. And so I don't know how Barnes thinks about his team. I don't know if he's cognizant that there's a scheduled scoring drought, that he's cognizant that I can't trust these guys at the line. He is so locked into his system, which, again, I want to grant has brought him a lot of success in a general sense. But I would be cognizant, pardon me, I would be cognizant that we're likely to stop scoring for a while. That's why that 13-point lead is a marker for me. And I just don't know if Rick Barnes thinks that about his team. I just don't know. I think he thinks this is what they should do. And so I'm going to coach them along the lines of what they should do. I'm thinking about them as what do they consistently do? And that's what would shape my decision making.
Yeah. There's another aspect of this too, where, it's kind of modern basketball kind of thinking, but there's a big argument kind of in the basketball, strategy world of, do you think of the last 5 minutes of the game as more important than any other 5 minutes in the game? And so obviously kind of the traditional view of that is, of course, the last 5 minutes is the most important. You want to have your best guys on the floor. That's why you save them. That's why you put the guy with two, 3, 4 fouls on the bench at various points of the game, because you need to have them for the down the stretch. The kind of modern argument in basketball is every minute has the same value. And so I'm not going to say you need to sit for 5 minutes now, because those 5 minutes could change the game just like the last 5 minutes can change the game. And so, I'm not here to, argue which one's necessarily right, but I do think that that's an interesting concept when you're dealing with players, that especially a player like Gillespie, who seems to feed off of, making baskets, and everything about his game improves when he's shooting the ball well. And that's pretty normal, right? For a scoring guard, that's a normal thing that guards go through. And Gillespie, again, he was shooting the ball well. I mean, he started the game hitting a three from super deep contested. It looked like Chris Lofton over Kevin Durant. I mean, that's what it looked like. He starts the game like that. He's shooting the ball lights out. I can't wrap my mind around taking him out of the game because he has 2 fouls. Again, if he had 3, okay. If he had 4, okay. But he has 2. He doesn't even have the most amount. He doesn't even have majority of the fouls that he's allowed to get yet. Like, why? I can't just, I don't know. I just can't sign off on the decision. If again, I've coached basketball. I'm more modern thinking about the game. I think it's just because of the era I was raised in. But I hate not having your best scoring options on the floor because I do think if Jacoby's in the game, and let's just say he plays a normal Jacoby game, you could go into the half with more than a 20-point lead, and Kentucky may lay down. I mean, that may be it if you're up 20 or more at the half. And
well, certainly a 20-point lead makes the last 5 minutes less important.
Exactly.
If you're able to maintain that. So again, I'm less new school on that, but it really does come down to this team. Points are a premium for this team. You can't neglect accumulating points for 5 minutes, and this team expect to win. And that's what they did. And it's because Rick Barnes is who he is. I mean, it's as set in stone as the Smoky Mountains. And I can't find it acceptable because I think if the program can be this good, it should be challenging for national championships. The program's going to be this good and no more. And at this point, I'm just tired of it. Rick should retire when he wants to. I'm ready for it whenever he decides he wants to.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the second half. Tennessee looked like they did against Florida in the second half. They just looked inept. They looked like they did not want to be in the game. And I think down the stretch, the biggest 2 things, which is just going to be horrible to talk about because the biggest 2 things that lost you that game down the stretch was, of course, first and foremost was free throws. We still did not hit free throws down the stretch. Nate Ament, not included. Nate Ament did a great job. Other than him, though, we did not make free throws. It feels, I mean, we're kind of joking about it, but it feels like we cannot make both free throws. It doesn't matter who's at the line, unless it's Nate Ament. We can't make both free throws down the stretch when it matters at all. We always only get one. We only get one. And I get it. If Jalen Carey is going to the line every time and he only gets one, you're like, oh, okay. It's Jalen Carey. I get it. I still would like for him to be better, but what are you going to do? Jacoby Gillespie has no business going 1 for 2 every time he steps the line down the stretch. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. The other thing that lost you the game down the stretch, which I wouldn't say has been like a common theme throughout the year, but I think is starting to become one, which is just your inability to get rebounds. When we're on the defensive end, it feels like we do a very bad job of boxing out, finding a guy, putting a butt on him, and just getting the ball when you need it. Obviously, this team is really great rebounding on the offensive end, getting second chance points. They're really good at that. But it's more important on defense. It's always going to be more important on defense to get rebounds, and they're not doing it.
Mac, man, I actually thinking about when we're going to talk about the basketball team, I thought, am I going to get back on there and complain about free throws and rebounding, particularly as basketball grammar? Those are, that's just effort and putting the time in. You box out, you fight through being boxed out, and you make your free throws. But this is who this team is. We know, and the coach is not coaching them, at least from the outside. He's not coaching them according to what they are. Every game we basically get on here, even the A&M win, how frustrated were we in the group chat about not being able to close this team out because you can't go to the easiest shot in basketball and consistently make it. Yep. This is who this team is. They're not better. They're not as good as the team that beat Houston. And you know who they are. But for some reason, Barnes only coaches them as if they are the ideal in his head rather than what they consistently do on the floor. It just is tiresome. It's just tiresome.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I wish I had something fresh, but this is every game with this team.
Yeah. I don't have anything to add to that except for I was really frustrated with a couple passes that Jacoby made down the stretch in the last minute and a half, 2 minutes, and he did the same thing against Arkansas. And I think that honestly is just another argument for Mac's point about like you have to get the points when you can. If you know your guys are not to where they need to be in those tight games at the end of the game, like if you can't trust them to hang on to the ball, then you better try to run it up when you have the ability to run it up and your guys are hot. Because if you go into the half, you come out in the first half and you've got a 20-point lead, like Mac said, either they lay down or the mountain's so big to climb that you just don't have to depend on Jacoby to bring the ball down and make a good decision when he's not proven that he can do that for the last couple of weeks when the game's on the line. So from that standpoint, regardless of which philosophy you subscribe to generally about the last 5 minutes versus every minute being important, for this team particularly, it seems that they're not good in the last 5 minutes when they've been given opportunity to close a game out. Like you said, even with the A&M game that they eventually did, they almost didn't and really struggled with a team that's just clearly should not have been competing with them in the way that they were. So if you can't trust them down the stretch at the end to hit a free throw or to make a good pass or make a good decision with an offensive possession, then you better score the points you better feed the dog while it's eating. So
to that point, Nick Gillespie did the same thing. I think it was after the first overtime against A&M. He dropped like this lazy behind his back bounce pass out to the perimeter that was picked off and run back down to the other end.
Yep.
Just an endless cycle. Could you figure out who your team is and coach them according to what we empirically know at this point? I would love to see that.
I mean, it's hard. I mean, we're obviously pretty down about this team, but I do think I would like to spend just a minute at least talking about, it does seem like Nate Ament is really playing better, and he's starting to figure it out, and I'm glad for that. For him, even just for him as an individual, at this point, let's just say, Jeff, you're right that this isn't a tournament team, or even if they are, maybe they don't make a run at all. They're a first weekend and they're bounced. At least Nate Ament might be helping out his draft stock right now. And so I'm happy for him. It seems like he played really good. I thought, especially down the stretch, he was kind of the only player that seemed to be competent when the game was getting, a little touch and go, and Kentucky was, clearly playing better and also had the lead. I mean, Tennessee did battle back and regain the lead late, but it just felt like Nate Ament was the only reason that you were in that game down the stretch, and he single-handedly pretty much in overtime won you the game against A&M. So it feels like Nate Ament is really starting to come along, and so I'm glad for that for him. But obviously, with the greater picture of this team, it's just not going to be enough, and I hate that.
Yeah, man, I got nothing to add to that except that I am curious about what this season is doing to his draft stock. I mean, he's had 2 good games, and they barely won one, lost the other to a lesser team. I have thought for a while now, it's not that he's not going to be drafted, but I've just thought, like, if you're looking at the profile of who you're going to take early in the lottery, if I were an NBA GM, having watched this UT team closely, he would be sliding on my draft board.
Yeah. Well, I think I had this question jotted down for us. I think we've already kind of hit it enough, but I was going to ask, where does this game leave you with this team? It sounds like, Jeff, you feel like this team is not a tournament team at all.
Yeah. I told my son that I thought before this game, they were going to have to make a pretty impressive showing in the SEC tournament. And now I'll be bummed, I'll be mad, I'll be upset. But like when they don't make the tournament, I'll be like, yeah, I probably should have seen that coming.
Yeah. Nick, sorry, go ahead. What's your question?
No, I was just going to ask you the same thing. Where do you feel like this team realistically is going to be for the postseason?
Yeah. I think that I'm probably 60% they don't make the tournament right now. It's probably where I'm at. So gun to my head, they don't make the tournament. The schedule does lighten up. I mean, they got Bama, which we're going to talk about, which is probably going to be brutal. But it does get a bit easier in February. And then they're going to have Vanderbilt a couple times right at the end of the season, and then Bama one more time. But there's a stretch in there in the middle of about 5 to 7 games, which are very winnable. But, is it going to be more like the A&M game where they're trying to scrape it out because we've seen that they're not good down the stretch in ball games so far? So if they're having to scrap a lot of those games and fight and claw at the end of the game, I expect they'll go probably about 500 in those games. If they can play more like they, were playing 3 weeks ago, then I think they can win all those games. But there's just not a lot of evidence to believe that they're going to be able to get back to that at this point.
And even if they win a considerable amount of those, that's a quality win issue at that point.
Yeah, at that point, who have you beat? Yeah, who have you beat? Yeah. Where am I at with this team? I'm at the same place I was 2 months ago when Cade Phillips got hurt, and I said that we were cooked.
Oh, man. Oh, gosh, that's a good plug. Good job, Nick. Way to bring it home. I'm a little bit higher on this team than you guys are. I think this will be a tournament team. I think we'll end up somewhere around the 10 seed line. I feel like we're going to get in, if for no other reason than just because of our our pedigree. I think that Tennessee is a good is a team that you want to have playing in the tournament, if nothing else, to sell tickets. So I think this team's going to get in. Obviously, if they lost like every game or something, if they do enough terribly to not deserve a spot, they're not going to. But if we're on the bubble at all, I really feel confident that Tennessee's going to get in. I'm a little bit higher than you guys, but I think it's looking really bad unless they can just figure it out and turn it around drastically really quick. And I don't know for sure that's going to happen. But anyways, let's go ahead and transition to the next game, which is Saturday, January 24th, this Saturday. Tennessee goes on the road against number 17, Bama. That's a 7:30 p.m. tip on ESPN. So just, if you haven't been watching Bama closely this year, Bama beat Kentucky at home by about 15 points, but they did lose to Texas at home. So, you've got they took care of business against Kentucky at home like we couldn't, but they also, found a way to lose a game against Texas, who we beat pretty good at home. So, what does that mean? I don't know. But I think obviously Bama is beatable, but you got to play great, and they've got to have a bad game to do it. Kind of the biggest news surrounding this Bama team right now currently is about Charles Bediako. Nick, are you up to speed on this at all?
Yes.
Okay. Bediako, listener, if you don't know, is the first player in NCAA history who entered the NBA draft, signed an NBA contract after playing college basketball, and has now been given clearance to return to college basketball. And so Bama has, as of like today, gotten him cleared via a lawyer in Alabama.
Temporary injunction.
Yeah.
The final decision hasn't been made, but he gets to play till it is.
Correct.
And
yeah.
Every time this happens with NCAA, they lose. So he's in.
Yeah. I fully, Jeff and I were talking before, we both kind of expect to see him on the floor at some point in this game on Saturday, if not for a lot of it. I think that all just depends on, what kind of shape he's in. Is the Bama team that he's playing for now, is the scheme different than the one he's played 4 years ago? Obviously in basketball, that stuff doesn't change as quickly as it can in football, but so I fully expect to see him on the court, especially given the fact that Alabama has been having defensive struggles this year. They're ranked 67th in the adjusted defensive efficiency rating. But when Bediako was on the team a few years ago, they were a top three. Yeah.
4 years ago.
Yeah. They were a top 3 defense when he was there. So he is a very good post player, very good defender.
Some might say NBA quality.
Some might say good enough to get a contract in the NBA.
To wear a San Antonio Spurs jersey for a few years.
Exactly. But yeah, so he is going to definitely be playing. So I think that's important to note. And obviously, as just general fans of college athletics, this is kind of a bummer because it just feels like this is the stuff that we thought was impossible. Right. I mean, this stuff is completely unheard of. I mean, it's just crazy. But what I wrote down here in my notes is this is Bama privilege on full display. Of course, Alabama gets this. I mean, if Tennessee for
Of
some
course, it's
reason was
also
able,
like the week before they play us,
right,
right?
exactly, exactly.
Yes,
It's the
exactly,
most Tennessee thing ever.
exactly.
It's the most Bama thing ever. Joey Aguilar can't get a court date, but this Joker's been playing professional basketball for 4 years and just gets to come back and play against
Yeah,
Tennessee.
Against Tennessee.
I
It's,
mean,
I mean, yes.
if Dalton Connect was able to come back, you know that the NCAA would use the full force of their power to be like, no, this is not happening, and there's no way anyone would let it happen. So this is the classic thing that feels like this would never happen for Tennessee, but of course it happens for one of our most hated rivals right before we play them. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just you can't make
Yeah.
this stuff up. You couldn't pay Hollywood to write a script like this.
Yeah, Joey's going to get denied his petition, but of course Diego Pavia got to come back and wax us in our own stadium this year. This guy will probably get some kind of injunction that he can't play next week, but because he gets to play until he can, he'll play just against Tennessee, and he'll have 12 blocks, and it'll just be just a blood fest. I mean,
yeah.
oh gosh, it's so frustrating.
Some other key players here for Bama is LeBaron Fallon Jr., Aiden Holloway, Amari Allen. LeBaron, he's kind of considered one of the best players in the country right now. Really, really solid player. Definitely going to be a lottery pick. On paper, it doesn't look like Tennessee has many paths to victory if Alabama shows up and plays the way they can. I think you're going to have to get some help from Alabama to have a chance to win this game. And
That's
given
exciting.
that, what do you guys think Tennessee has to do to win this game? Like, do you think Tennessee's best effort is enough to beat this team?
I do. I think their
Yeah,
best
their best
effort is
effort.
enough to beat this team. I don't think they'll have it because it's in Tuscaloosa. I think that Bediako will make them better defensively, and it'll if they don't instantly become like a great defensive team, they'll be better than they have been. And it's a Nate Oates team. I'd actually say that if Tennessee wins this game, it's more about the fact that they just had an off shooting night than Tennessee actually just went down there in Tuscaloosa and beat them, because that's kind of the Nate Oates MO is that they live or die by the three. They have to go fast, and they score like 90-something points a game pretty much year in and year out. I haven't seen it for this year, but Tennessee scores just above 80, I think. And so, but Tennessee holds people in the 60s. So I actually think it'll be close. I think they'll both be in the 80s. I think that we'll, hopefully be able to get a little above our average. They'll probably be a little bit below their average, but I think they'll probably win this game something like 86-82.
Man, I just expect the full-on apocalypse scenario. Everybody who goes to any kind of camp as a developing player knows that when they say who wants to play up, your age level, who wants to play up, you sign up for that because playing better competition makes you better. This kid's been playing with NBA players for 4 years. And, if you took a marginal NBA player and dropped them off against the team that won the high school state championship this year, they look like a god on earth, because there's something about reaching that level that requires something that very few people can attain to. So I'm assuming the kid's in shape. I'm assuming that he's been refined for 4 years in the NBA. I bet he'll have a great game, because if I'm in his shoes, knowing that the whole country is ticked off about this, I'm going to go out and grind their noses in it. I'm going to dominate if I can, to just kind of play the heel if you're a pro wrestling fan. So I assume he has a great game. I assume they wax Tennessee catastrophically. I think this is bad. I think this gets ugly.
Yeah, I'm much more where you are, Jeff, than Nick. I was surprised, Nick, that you gave a score that close. I hope you're right. Obviously, I would love to see Tennessee play a tough game and have a chance to win. But I just feel like this is going to be, a 15, 20 point win for Bama. I don't see Tennessee, showing up and being able to stay in this game, especially if they continue playing offensively the way they have, not making free throws, rebounding poorly. But the original question, if Tennessee plays their best game, like I said, I think if Tennessee plays their best game, if you, in that scenario, if Bama also plays their best game, I think Tennessee loses a close one. But if Tennessee plays their best game and you can get one of those fantastic Rick Barnes defensive performances and Alabama's got an off shooting night and we actually rebound the ball well, then I think Tennessee could win kind of a grinded out game. It's probably more like in the 70s. I think that's Tennessee's only path to victory is kind of a more low scoring affair that Tennessee is able to just kind of dictate terms to Bama and find a way to grind it out. Ultimately, I guess we all kind of have Tennessee losing, so I guess we don't expect Tennessee to do that. But I hope that Tennessee shows up and plays well. I mean, at this point, you're kind of just taking those moral victories. Like, I just hope we look better than we have, and I hope that we start to trend upwards. But I don't think this is a game where Tennessee rights the ship and finds a way to win.
If I can go adjacent topic on this real quick, Mac, the NCAA as an organization makes me a redneck mad. I don't know if y'all saw, but once this guy sought eligibility, the NCAA it's their news feed on Twitter, but it's literally NCAA PR is the handle. Their PR statement was Congress has to get involved to fix college athletics. And again, I've said it a million times. Everybody knew player compensation was a volcano that was going to erupt. And the NCAA did nothing about it at all. And it blew up. And their only plan now is to continue doing nothing about it and beg Congress to fix it for them. And so right now with this player, the NCAA, it looks to me like it's just basically given up on college football. They can't regulate it. They're not going to have a hand in it, but they make their money off the NCAA tournament. Right now, they can issue a statement and say none of Alabama's wins with this player will count towards NCAA eligibility. They will be counted as forfeit losses in NCAA record keeping. But what are they doing? They're begging Congress to bail them out. They let European pros come play in the NCAA. We benefited from that. Mac reminded me, Vescovi did this. We benefited from that. So they said European players can play in the NCAA ecosystem. They get paid to know somebody's going to say, well, then other pro leagues can send their players to play in the NCAA. They did nothing about it. They're doing nothing about it when it's very reasonable for them to simply put their foot down and say, you will not be in the NCAA tournament. And they're not going to. They're going to sit around and ask Congress to do it. At this point, I'm very happy for Congress to step in and fix this, but it should be required that the NCAA be dissolved and some new governing body be put in place to handle these situations that the NCAA has demonstrated for a generation or more that they cannot and will not handle it. Fine, you want Congress to bail you out? You're all fired. None of you are rehired in the new governing body. Get somebody in there who will actually govern the sport rather than sitting on their hands waiting for somebody else to fix the problem their negligence brought upon us all. I'm so sick of the NCAA. Redneck rant over.
Cosign.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the NCAA hates athletes, man. I mean, they hate collegiate athletes. They do
And
nothing
fans.
to. Yeah, yeah. They literally despise and spit on the product that fills their pockets and that makes them rich. I mean, it's horrible, and they don't give any sort of credence to what's actually best for the sport, what's actually best for the players, what's actually best for the fans, and they're just wasting their product, man. It's really sad to see.
They won't even
Well, guys,
won't exercise basic agency. Basic agency. I mean, it's well within your control to prevent a lot of these problems. This specific problem is as obvious as it can be, and they won't do anything except beg Congress.
Yeah, it's brutal. Well, guys, I think that was a good conversation we had about basketball, and I'm happy where Tennessee is landing in the transfer portal. We're going to talk next week. I wanted to run this by you guys in front of our listeners. How do we feel about kind of recapping, Tennessee's football season as a whole next week, and maybe just talking about like where the season left us and how we feel about that? How do we feel about talking about that next week?
Yeah, let's hurt ourselves.
I feel like I'm ready to get hurt again. Let's relive it, baby. Let's do it.
So we're going to be football heavy on the podcast next week, listener, even though basketball is in full swing, and we'll talk about the Bama game as well. But I just wanted to
briefly because it's going to be bad. So
yes,
since it's Payne next week, Lord willing, we'll get Joe Davis back. Thoughts and prayers to the Davis family as they mourn this week. If it's Payne week next week, Mac, I think you got to eat hot wings during the episode.
That sounds great. I love it. That sounds great.
Off.
That's it.
I love it. Sounds good.
That's it.
All right, Nick, why don't you go ahead and plug our socials for us, bud?
Absolutely. You can find us. You can find this podcast on Spotify. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, and then you can follow us on X, the artist formerly known as Twitter, at volatile_1998. So be sure to like, follow, subscribe. We appreciate all of you that are listening and watching, and we hope you'll tell your fellow Vol fans about this because you need someone to go. You need someone to go through this with you because it's rough. It's rough out there. So,
absolutely. All right, thank you guys for listening, and remember, it's terminal.